Ladies and gentlemen, Binnall of America!
And now, ladies and gentlemen, your host, Tim Binnall.
No commercials, no subscriptions, no network, no rules, and at the end of the day, my friends, no comparison. Welcome back to another edition of VOA The Revival. And in interest of full transparency, we're recording this a week before Christmas, but you're going to be hearing it in January. So if we somehow mention Christmas or something like that, or if I wish the guest a happy holidays at the end, don't be like, hey, what's that all about?
Happy President's Day.
Yeah, exactly. So with that in mind, tonight's guest is Michael Hughes. You can find his website, michaelmhughes.com. He's probably most well known for his book, Magic for the Resistance, but he has quite a varied career of writing and topics that he's covered, and we're going to be getting into a lot of that stuff. He's very online, as am I, so we've crossed paths many times in the cybersphere, and I had the opportunity to hang out with him a couple of times down in Nashville at the Strange Realities Conference. And I was really, I hadn't know who Mike was, so I'm like, oh, it's cool. I'm going to meet Mike Hughes. It's going to be great. We really hit it off. He's a great dude. We did some exploring around Nashville, and he's one of those folks who now have been on the show that it was always like, and I have like a whole list of them, people I would cross paths with over the years. And I'm like, when we get Binnall of America up and running again, we're going to get you on the show. So it's like now I'm reaching out to all those people and be like, hey, remember? So thankfully, Mike has agreed to come on the show. He was excited about doing it, and he's listened to the show before. He's a Binnall of America fan, so it's going to be a fun conversation tonight. And I'm really looking forward to this, Mike. I don't think we had sort of a chit chat in Nashville, but I don't think we ever had a sit down chat. So I'm looking forward to us having a bona fide conversation here tonight on the show.
Yeah, me too. It was more like a stand up on the concrete median by the hotel chat.
Yeah, exactly.
At 3 a.m. But yeah, it's great. I was saying a little earlier before the show started, the first time I listened to your podcast and its earliest incarnation, I was driving, and it was just like the perfect late night accompaniment for just driving through dark woods in upstate New York. So yeah, and it was great to finally meet in Nashville at that great conference. That I recommend everyone try to get to. And, it's always great to meet people in person because, like you said, we're both online people, and, you never quite can be sure what the person is actually like until you just hang out and have a couple beers or just, stand in a parking lot at 3 a.m. and then you really know who somebody is. And it's been a real pleasure.
Yeah, man. It's same here. It's been great. I consider you a friend, and that's why I was excited to get you on the show here as part of the revival. Now, for the folks who are unfamiliar with Michael Hughes, it's kind of the Binnall of America standard. Give us the bio, the background. Who is Michael Hughes, and what's your journey been in this field, if you will?
Oh man,
I know.
Yeah, well, that's always a tough one. Well, ever since I was a kid, I liked weird stuff. I liked the supernatural. I grew up watching In Search Of, and watching horror movies and stuff like that, and it really just formed who I am. I was lucky to be in the supernatural 70s when.
Oh, nice.
One of my formative experiences, one of my dad's friends somehow got a 16 millimeter film copy of Chariots of the Gods and showed it in his living room.
Nice.
And, so from when I was little, I just absorbed all this stuff. My dad would read books by Brad Steiger and Frank Edwards and Hans Holzer and stuff like that. And just, when there were just paper, mass market paperbacks of all that stuff everywhere. Like you walk into a grocery store and there's a rack of paperbacks, and a third of them would be about weird with UFOs or Bigfoot or the Loch Ness Monster or ghost and the supernatural, that sort of thing. So my dad would get these books and then he'd just leave them around and I'd pick them up and read them. And it's just really, it formed who I am and what I like and what I love. But I also feel like I've just always been kind of tuned to all that stuff anyway. I've had, some strange experiences when I was a kid that are kind of hard to explain. I just feel like some people are born with like an antenna that naturally picks up on strange stuff. It's always been who I am. So, but like you said, I've written a lot. I, again, sort of gravitate towards writing about the things that interest me, which range it from magic, occultism, the paranormal, UFOs, everything that falls in that category. Psychedelics, I've written a lot about. Some of the scientific research on psychedelics. I wrote some of the early feature stories on some of the newer research going on with that. I was an editor of a weed magazine for a while. But what the weed magazine taught me is that cannabis is like a fascinating plant, but stoner culture is really kind of dumb and boring. Like the whole, like the Cheech and Chong ish, and I don't know. There's something so I'm kind of glad I sort of withdrew from that, covering that stuff, because there's only so much you can write about, like a strain of weed. Oh, it gave me couch lock, or I cleaned my garage. I was so energized. Like you were just high. Like there's just so much nonsense and BS around all that. But I've written some novels that incorporate all the crazy, scary stuff that I like. The Blackwater Lights trilogy, it's called. That was published by Penguin Random House. I just, and as you know, I've always been an activist too. So,
absolutely,
that whole thing that I got famous for really happened by kind of happenstance, I guess, because of my colliding interest of like general kind of human rights, political activism, and also occultism and magic and witchcraft and all that stuff. So I've been all over the place, and I like being all over the place. I think it's a good place to be.
Yeah, it's good. It's good. I'm of the same ilk in a sense. I kind of have my finger in all these different pots, and it's when one thing you kind of lose just one thing, you can move over to something else and kind of come back and see what's cooking, since you left. So that's a it's a way to avoid boredom, Exactly, I can't understand how people just get up and do the same things over and over again and never find new interest or hobbies, Right. Like the folks, it always blows my mind when someone says, "Oh man, I'm getting ready to retire in about 3 years. I don't know what I'm going to do with myself when I retire." Like, what is wrong with you, man? Like, if I could retire right now, I still don't have enough time in the day to do the stuff I want to do. So that's great.
That baffles me.
Yeah, that is odd. Yeah, it's like, don't you have any, like, what would you? Yeah, it's interesting. Yeah, I talked to like a regional UFO director one time, and I'm like, well, what are you gonna do if? And he was like him, Stan Friedman, Rich Dolan, and him, and I posed the same question to all three separately, so there was no influence there. And Stan was like, I'm like, what would you do if the government came out tomorrow and said the UFOs were real? And he was like, I'd be fascinated, following the story closely or whatever. And Rich Dolan kind of had the same thing. And then the regional UFO guy was like, probably just do a lot of fishing. It's like, nice. So you're just out, dude. He's just like, I'm out. Yeah, fuck it.
I love that, man. That's a great answer.
So, Magic for the Resistance. How did this come about? Tell me about your interest in magic, because I find it interesting, but hard to wrap my arms around it. We've had Ren Collier on the show before. I've talked to Ren at length about it. As you might remember last year at the Strange Realities, they did like a ritual. I think you were in the ritual.
Yeah. I got to hold Steve Berg's hand.
Oh.
I was like, Steve, I really feel like I know you a lot better now that I've held your hand for 20 minutes.
So, how do you define magic and sort of how do you see it in your life, if you will? Because to me, it's like I just don't have any, I got no magic mojo, if you will. So, I have a really hard time connecting to it in a way. But I obviously respect and know a lot of people who are involved in that scene. And it's like, oh, wow, this is really, I'm always trying to kind of get a better understanding of it. So, how do you sort of define magic and like I said, apply it in your life, if you will?
Sure. Yeah, that's a big question. I guess an easy way to answer it is kind of to talk about how I got interested in it. And that is when I was a kid, I found another one of these mass market paperback books. And it was called How to Produce Miracles by a guy named Orman McGill, who was like a phenomenal magician, but he was also a hypnotist. And hypnotism always fascinated me. Like there was a kid when I was a kid in the Boy Scouts, one of the Boy Scout leaders would hypnotize people, like hypnotize the kids in my scout troop. And it just blew my mind. And the idea of hypnosis was also just super duper fascinating. Mm-hmm. So I read this book, How to Produce Miracles. It was basically a book about mentalism or psychic magic. And I always loved like doing magic tricks and stuff like that, but I wasn't that good at like card manipulation and things like that. So this book was basically focused on mentalism, like how to produce experiences that felt like real psychic manifestations. And it blew my, I was like 10, 11 years old when I got this book, and it just like blew my mind, like it taught you basic ways to hypnotize people. And I hypnotized this girl in my 6th grade class. and at first while I was doing it, I was like, is she just kind of playing along to be nice to me? But it was real. And like, holy shit, man, what just happened? And so that's the kind of stuff I really got into. And there was another book on mentalism in my local library. And so I kind of devoured that and got real into like psychic magic, like doing tricks that look like you're reading people's minds or like moving something on a table or whatever. But at the same time, like I said before, I'm interested in real psychic stuff. Mm-hmm. So doing these tricks when I was younger was kind of a way to like replicate that and see what it might feel like if it was real. And then, so I actually performed in my late 20s and early 30s. I performed as a mentalist, like for events and charities and things like that. Like I would do a stage show where I would read people's minds and all kinds of stuff like that. And it was pretty powerful stuff. And this, you'll like this. When I was at a Fortean conference at the International Fortean Organization, used to be based here in Baltimore. Mm-hmm. They had a conference probably like 2016, 17, something like that. And at the conference, I did like a mentalism show. And I said to these folks, I'm like, I'm going to do these tricks, and they are tricks, but they're going to look just like real psychic abilities in mind reading. So I went through some of my best, like strongest material, and people applauded. They loved it. And a couple of people came up, but there was this group that were standing around. They came up to me and they're like, we know that was real. And I said, no. Like, no, I preface this whole thing with this is not real. These are tricks. My point is to show you how easily people. No. No, that was real, man. That could not. There's no way that could have been fake. And they just simply refused to believe me. So that experience made me realize like how deeply beliefs can kind of take a hold in people, like even, and that's what made me so hyper aware of like tricksterish stuff in ufology and in the paranormal. And I really believe like if you don't have a magician with you or a mentalist with you when you study, you go to document someone who, says they have psychic powers or a poltergeist or something like that, or UFOs even, you're really missing that critique. Yeah. So that's a long way of getting around but I've always been into tarot. I got my first tarot deck when I was 11. Mm-hmm. My aunt gave it to me. I think she found it like on a discount table, some cheap ass store somewhere. But it was the James Bond 007 tarot card deck. Oh, cool! And because it was made for the movie Live and Let Die, and Jane Seymour, beautiful, buxom, gorgeous Jane Seymour with this low cut dress is like putting down tarot cards for Bond. And of course, like the Lover's card comes up naturally. And the thing. So I had also seen the movie. So I was like, kind of like, I'm not sure if it was more of the cards or if it was Jane Seymour that was the main attraction. But I started playing with these cards and they fascinated me. They kind of scared me a little bit, like the Devil card and the Death card, creepy. But I was intrigued by like divination, and I started using them, like doing readings for friends and for myself and things like that. So that was kind of the first inkling. I think a lot of people's first steps in magic happen with a divination practice, because when you start using tarot cards or working with the I Ching or geomancy or things like that, you start to think, wow, this is like there's something real here. Yeah. So it gives people a taste of what magic is and what magic can do. And it naturally leads a lot of people to thinking, well, if I could do this with cards, I wonder what else I can do. Right. And then I discovered, I've always been intrigued by magic, but I was always kind of freaked out by it and, brought up Catholic and terrified.
I think that's with the barrier that I have where I'm like, I don't want to fucking mess with this stuff. It scares me. So, I think that kind of does. Yeah. I mean, we're, and we've seen The Exorcist, we know what playing with a Ouija board did to Linda Blair. And, I think there was this bit of fright in my approach to magic whenever I'd think about actually taking it up. But it was also, there's that transgressive appeal of certain things too. Yeah. Just like with horror movies or, I loved horror movies, but then I'd be scared after, not being able to sleep. But so there's an appeal of things that can be scary. But I discovered chaos magic. It's the first thing in the 1990s. And because I was online for CompuServe and AOL and all that kind of stuff. So everything was sort of dial up and you dial in your modem and then you'd text, you just post to these like bulletin boards. And there were bulletin boards about UFO, alt.UFOs and alt.paranormal and alt.magic for all the old creeps like me out there, or in a rocking chair. Right, exactly. I mean, we'll be talking about this crap in our old age home days. But there was this real strong current of chaos magic, and that was like making magical sigils, like taking a word or a phrase of something you want to happen and breaking it apart and making an image out of it. And I found that kind of cool and compelling. So I did it and it worked. And, it's that gif of the guy whose mind is blowing, that's how I felt. I was like, holy shit, there's something to this, maybe I can investigate. And it wasn't scary in the way that other like witchcraft still was to me. Witchcraft, I was still thinking about the 70s movies of the covens capturing people and sacrificing them. And it was also, there was a lot of like satanic panic and stuff going on. Oh, yeah, for sure. During that time period. So, you couldn't help but be a little like, put off. But then there was this new age bookshop that I went to.
And of course, they had tons of books. I went for the UFO books, that's what I did. But they also had books on witchcraft and paganism and all that New Age stuff. So I started reading a little bit more, and I met this woman who was the tarot card reader there, and I kind of think she had the hots for me. I didn't pick it up though. She was considered like she wasn't in my, age range or anything like that. So there was no, I never kind of knew that, but in retrospect, she basically was like, "Hey, let me give you a tarot card reading," And then she told me she was a witch, and she gave me a copy of this book by Scott Cunningham, who wrote tons of books on witchcraft, probably the biggest selling witchcraft books. And it wasn't like it is today, where like you can't throw a rock without hitting a witch. Right. It was still very, people were in the so-called broom closet and stuff. So I was a little freaked out, but I read this Scott Cunningham book, and it was like Wicca, and it was all about the goddess and the seasons and nature and all that shit. I'm like, I'm a kind of a hippie dude, I could groove with this. I'm disaffected from Catholicism and like patriarchy and all that kind of stuff. So it really clicked, and I started doing, some of the rituals and things, not really to like get stuff, but just more of like in a spiritual sense to experience it. And so that led to looking into like ceremonial magic, and because the more you play with magic, the more you're like, I wonder what this is like. I wonder what that's like. Right. And I hadn't had any, I wasn't possessed by demons or anything, so things were going pretty cool.
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah.
So I got really into it's called the Hermetic Order of the Golden Dawn, and that's kind of, if you remember Ren's ritual. Ren's ritual is more the Thelema, which is Aleister Crowley's kind of offshoot of the Golden Dawn. But the Golden Dawn started in 1888, and it really it's really still like the template for most Western magic. Yeah. So I started doing that, get deep into it. It's really like can make your head hurt, because it combines like tarot and Kabbalah, or rather like a Christian version of Jewish Kabbalah, and astrology and alchemy, and it tries to like cram it all into a package that makes sense, Yeah. And I spent years, and I'm making all these like magical tools, and it's real complicated, because these are Victorian era educated and the nice thing is the women were involved in the Golden Dawn, which was kind of rare, because these guys were like Masons, and they came out of Freemasonry, which I also became a Freemason as part of all this. But like these guys had time, these guys were they got money and time, and they can spend 6 hours, a night at the lodge doing all kinds of long-winded rituals and all that stuff.
Yeah.
So I kind of like, there was a point where, and the point that made me sort of pull back from that style of ceremonial Western magic is I met with a rabbi at like a Masonic function. I'm sitting next to this rabbi. Yeah. And I'm like, yo, man, I do Kabbalistic magic. Isn't that cool? And he's like, well, what do you mean by that? And I said, well, it's based in the Kabbalah. And, it's the Golden Dawn, this and that. He's like, that's not Kabbalah, man. I mean, he's a little more dignified than I'm making him sound, man. but he's essentially said that's not Kabbalah. He's like, that's Christians kind of took Kabbalah and changed it and ran with it. And then the Golden Dawn like grabbed onto that. He's like, but if you want to learn real Kabbalah, you have to study with a rabbi. He's like, this is Jewish wisdom tradition that's been passed down for, centuries and centuries. Yeah. And it's not what these guys are doing or what they're telling you they're doing. I'm like, well, wait a minute. So I kind of, that was like a eureka moment. And I stopped and thought about what I was doing. And I said, maybe I'm spinning my wheels, all this ceremonial magic stuff. Yeah. And because there's always like, and I realized like some people do great magic by like lighting a candle, And that's all there is to it.
Yeah.
You know, there's not all, you don't have to have all these tools and ceremonies and all this stuff, like intention. I knew there was something to ritual, and I was getting a lot out of it, but I felt like I had to like just sort of start over. So for the next several years, I started reading magic like from the ancient Egyptians and then the Greeks and then the magic of the Middle Ages, but also magic how it was done in Africa, Taoist magic. So I sort of started completely from scratch, and I'm like, what are the universal things in all these traditions that people do? Like, well, what do they do in China in the 3rd century that is echoed over here in like enslaved people in the U.S. in 1860 and things like that. And I just started trying to take little bits that seem kind of universal and patch them together and make something that worked for me. And
interesting. Now, let me jump in because
sorry. Yeah, I told you I ramble, man. I'm sorry.
No, it's all right. Now, can you give me an example of what one of these universal things would be? Because I'm very intrigued by that. Because
yeah. Well, the one everyone can understand is what became referred to as like contagion. All right. Yeah. So think about if I said to you, hey, Tim, man, I've got this guitar that John Lennon played, and it's going up for auction for $400,000. And you'd be like, wow, man, that's a lot of money. But like, that's a guitar that John Lennon played. Now we know that guitar is just wood and metal and plastic, whatever the hell was made of the guitar out of. But there's a magic to it because it's associated with something. Or an autograph, how much people pay for autographs, or just to be in the presence of like a relic in a church or something like that. So that's one of the principles, and everybody gets that. And the other is, I think people get as well, and that is correspondence. So the idea in magic is that if you want to do magic for something, let's say you want to go on a trip to Jamaica, all right? Now that's, you want to go, and you're dying, and you're so sick of the winter, you want to go to Jamaica, you're having a hard time getting the money together, you really want to go. So you want to go to Jamaica. So what might you do? If you were forming a ritual to do it, you might use a sunflower, because Jamaica is sunny. You might use green, black, and I think yellow or red, or for the colors. You might find things that have those colors. You might get candles that match the Jamaican flag. You might look up who a goddess or god is that might be part of Jamaican ritual, things like that. So magic has to do with contagion. That's why people are always freaked out. Like, don't let the witch get your fingernails when you clip them, because they'll put a spell on you. Or people always guarded like their the stuff that came out of their body, because if someone gets that gives them some sort of psychic link to you. So that's like contagion. And correspondence is, and this goes back to the ancient Greeks and all, is that if you consider the world like magical, then things that look alike have correspondences. So, if you wanted to put a curse on somebody, you might get a mandrake root because it looks like a person. Or, if you want to if you want to win in battle, you use the color red because that's associated with Mars, and Mars is the god of war and things like that. So those are really like the through lines of magic, and there's a lot more than that, obviously. But that's how people can create. And people kind of innately understand that, if you, like, you're in love, like, I'm not a huge fan of love spells because I feel like, you don't want to try to coerce people to like you or love you.
Underhanded, yeah.
But you know, but people innately, like when I was a kid, like I got this like scarf that belonged to one of my girlfriends, and that scarf was like magical to me. You know, I'd like put it on my pillow and sleep with it, and the perfume smelled like her and stuff. You know, the scarf still had her perfume, and that's like you know, people get that.
Yeah,
so for me, we're all sort of like magically wired anyway. We all think magically. We're all magical thinkers, even if we try really hard to dismiss that sort of thing. Yeah. And to do magic is just making yourself a little more open to that and a little more creative. I look at magic as like an artistic way of interacting. Alan Moore, the great comic book artist and writer, he said art is magic and magic is art. It's really kind of hard to pull them apart. When you think about it, like a great book can change the course of history. A work of art can inspire people to do things, or So
it
like
comes out of someone's mind. So it's like
exactly. And I think fiction is really one of the most magical arts because, and Steve, I first read this in Stephen King's book on writing, and again, mind blowing explosions in my head. You know, when he said it was so simple, is that like if I'm writing a story and I write the story and it's about King uses kind of a similar analogy. It's like he's like, right now, there's a cage in front of me. Inside that cage is a rabbit, a white rabbit. And on that rabbit's back in red ink is the number 8. And he's like, now I'm sitting here in, you know, bumfuck Maine. We're at Bangor, Maine, writing this right now.
With all due respect to Lauren Coleman, who's
I love Bangor. I love Maine. Yeah.
Just be as far.
Yes, I love Lauren too, and I love Bangor. My brother lives in Maine. We love Maine. We love Maine. We love Bangor. So Stephen King, so he says, he writes in his book, he said, I'm in Bangor, Maine. And I'm sitting here, and it's 1991 or whatever it was. And it doesn't matter where you are. You might be reading this in Philadelphia. You might be reading this in Cancun. You might be reading this in Iceland. But we're communicating. He's like, this is telepathy. I'm through these little squiggles on a piece of paper. I created that image in your mind.
Oh, and that's in your mind, yeah.
And that's telepathy. He's like, it transcends time. It transcends space, because no matter where or when you are, this image I've just sent is like, it's happening in your head. And it seems kind of silly and, well, duh, when you think about it, but it's real. There's something amazing about that. You know, there's something that is true telepathy. That's true, like, transference. And so to me, you know, magic is art is some of the most powerful magic. William S. Burroughs went and saw Led Zeppelin, and he's like, this is a mass Dionysian ritual, because people are just like ecstatic and freaking out like Dionysus, like
right.
Like, you know, and so you know, for me, magic is just a way of approaching life, I guess. It doesn't have to involve, like, I enjoyed Ren's ritual, and, you know, he's very deep into that particular, like, path of magic, and that's awesome. But for me, like, that type of magic just started feeling like kind of, I don't know, like,
sounds like too much work.
Too much work when. Yeah, and I was gonna use another bad example, but I won't. But
go ahead.
Yeah, but yeah, it's like, I think magic can be really simple, and some of the best magic is just some of the simplest things that you could do. That old woman walking into the Catholic Church and lighting a novena candle for her sick sister. You know, that's powerful magic.
Yeah,
that's all you need.
Yeah, it seems like it has a lot to do with sort of like the power of belief, and that's an actual power, and then it can be harnessed along with a whole bunch of other stuff. But yeah, that kind of is something that I took away. So you wrote this book,
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Magic for the Resistance. Now, first of all, I mean, I understand why you would want to write the book because, I mean, everyone who listens to the show knows my politics. I can't stand Trump. I think he's a fucking asshole. I mean, that's putting it mildly. Like, I think, he's a dangerous con man, cult leader, death cult leader, it seems like. And I mean, probably most of the people who support him stopped listening to Binnall America back when he first showed up on the scene, and that's fine. I don't really care, It's like I don't need to appease. I don't want those people listening to the fucking show. So it's like that's part of it. So I mean, you wrote the book, so I understand why you would want to write the book. I understand the whole, but what made you decide to sort of put your neck out there in a sense? And do this, because I know it cannot have possibly been easy, because anybody I was reading an article the other day just about Republicans who opposed Trump, and this old, I presume an old lady was like, you may have read the same article. The old lady was like, at the senior home, she's like, you can't even say anything about Trump because there's an 82-year-old guy here that'll flip out and start screaming at you and shit. So it's like, just from that little microcosm, like, if you dare to say anything about, you immediately get mobbed by the psychos, the cult members. So I guess what sort of made you, it was a brave decision to write the book is the point I'm trying to make. So what made you, and I applaud you for that. What made you decide to fucking do this? Because I cannot fathom, I wouldn't have, just speaking out about him tonight on the show, I'm just like, all right, hopefully I don't hear any shit. So like what sort of motivated you to take that leap, if you will?
Yeah, thank you. I mean, I don't know if it was necessarily brave. I've always had kind of a big mouth. Even when I was a little kid, I really despised seeing people bullied or abused or when things were unfair. I just always had a sense of like, this is unfair. This shouldn't be happening this way. And I would open my mouth, and sometimes that would get me into trouble. So it feels like that constitutional part of me that's drawn to spooky stuff and weird stuff. That's part of who I am too. I've just had never had a easy time keeping my mouth shut when I thought something was unfair. And I think most people who know me would probably laughing right now. But what happened is I just came up. I was sitting around. I've always been an activist. I'm not so much now because I work in media and I have to kind of pull back my political, the stuff I talk about politically and stuff. But since this is all in the past, I'm free to talk about it. I've always been an activist ever since I was into no nukes when I was like 15. I went to this big rally in Central Park with Bruce Springsteen and Crosby, Stills and Nash and Jackson Brown and all that stuff. It was, so that was, I grew up with an activist mentality and an activist mindset. And then the environment, I became very strong environmentalist and did a lot of environmental activism and things like that. And I was always out at like rallies and protests. And it was just what I did. Yeah. And so when that guy became president, when he was running, I was very worried. And I think my fears turned out to be justified. And but after the election, I just felt so many people were just so full of despair. And some of the first things that happened, like was called the Muslim ban and
that was like
things like that, were just shocking. And people were, and it just seemed like a fire hose of shit every day. Yeah. That's the way I looked at it, like just pointing at us and just spraying people down. And so many of my friends and family and colleagues, things like that, were just at a loss of like what to do. And it felt so different. It felt like this was different, what was happening. It wasn't similar to like when George Bush became president. I didn't like his politics, but like I wasn't in in absolute fear that something insane could happen at any minute.
It was unsettling. The whole experience was fucking unsettling. I
mean,
I'm mind back to that time, and it was like when after he won the election, then it was like he held court up in his fucking crazy hotel in New York, and people would have to come in and go past all the things. And it was like, this is so freaky. I don't like any of this. This is just making me really uncomfortable right from the fucking word go. And it never ended.
It was terrifying, and I was terrified. So I kept thinking, like, what would be a good thing to do right now? Like, how can I energize people to fight back? Like, well, I could have a party and invite some DJs and then take that money and give it to like Planned Parenthood or something, or the ACLU or whatever, some force that was pushing in the other direction. But I felt like things had changed. Like, this was so different that the approach to it had to be different. Yeah. So I was sitting around with my friend drinking beer, as we are wont to do. This buddy of mine, great ideas come from a couple open cans of beer. And I was like, you know what, man? Like, I had this idea out of left field. What if, like, there was this ritual that, like, everybody could do at the same time all over the place, and, like, to push back against all of this, like a mass ritual. Because I was thinking back to, like, when the hippies tried to levitate the Pentagon during the Vietnam War. I was thinking back to, like, when witches, British witches, Gerald Gardner and this coven tried to keep Hitler from crossing the English Channel. So I'm thinking, hey, man, there's maybe something like this. And my friend, we're half in the bag, and he's like, that's crazy as shit, man. That's one of the dumbest things you've ever said. And I'm like, yeah, you're probably right. But I kept thinking, maybe that's not such a bad idea. So I wrote this little ritual, talked to some other, like, magic people about it, and got their feedback and stuff. And I posted it on a Medium. The blogging or website platform, and just thought, hey, some of my friends will like this, that'll get passed around. But within, like, an hour of posting it, it was just like I was watching the numbers turning and turning and turning and going, holy shit, man. And then so I'm at work, my day job, and I start getting calls from CNN and Fox and shit like that. Oh, wow. And this thing is just blowing through the roof, and it would not stop. It wasn't slowing down. So I put this little sign on my door, like, I'm in a meeting, do not disturb. And I'm just dealing with these calls, and people want to be
viral, essentially.
It went, I mean, never has any. I've had, like, one other thing go pretty big and viral, but this blew every, like, I was in shock. Right. I really didn't know what to do. And one of my favorite, but I had picked a day. I picked, like, the waning crescent moon, because that's a creepy time to do this ritual. And it was coming up. And all these people, like CNN in particular, kept calling me. They're going, we want to send reporters to videotape you people doing this, you witches doing this ritual. And I'm like, I'm not a witch, first of all, but that's cool. And so I started asking around, and everybody I talked to is like, no fucking way, dude. I'm not going on TV in this atmosphere with what's going on in the world right now. But the CNN people would not relent. They're like, come on, man, we got a producer who wants to cover this. So I did something very unusual for myself, but I lied. I was just like, I got to get them to leave me alone. And I said, I hear there are witches will be doing this ritual at Trump Tower at the night this is happening. Like, all right, man, this is great. Thank you. I have a producer there. And I'm like, oh my God. So the night of the ritual, like, this thing, I mean, it was in Rolling Stone. It was in the Boston Globe, Time. It was CNN. Fucking Tucker Carlson is trying to get me to come on his show. And I'm like, I don't think so, bro. Fox and Friends are inviting me on. Jeez. So the night of the ritual, which I think was February 14th, 2017. So I get all my friends together. One of my friends like, you can do it in my backyard, in my fire pit. I'm like, great, man. So I put the word out to, a bunch of friends, like a couple dozen friends, and everybody's psyched for it. And so I'm on my way to do this ritual, and I'm like sweating and nervous, and I'm wondering if there's going to be like a sniper there shooting me or something. I mean, I was just terrified, and at the same time in a constant state of shock. This thing is so big. Like people in England are talking, people in Australia are contacting me about it. So I stop at the liquor store because I'm like, my friends are getting together on a weeknight at midnight. I gotta have some beverages for them. So cases of beer and wine and shit, and I'm in the liquor store, and I go up, and this girl, she's like maybe 22, 23. She goes, "Oh, you look like you're having a party." Yeah. I was like, "Yeah, me and some friends are doing a binding spell on the president tonight." And she goes, "Do you have the unflattering photo?" And I looked at her, and I'm like, I realized like the unflattering photo is one of the ingredients of the ritual. And she starts laughing. She's like, "Yeah, me and my friends are doing it later too." So, it was just one crazy, this random liquor store person is also doing it. And people are emailing me. I was in the grocery store in London, and people were talking about this today. And so long story short, so we do the binding ritual, and it was streamed live on Facebook at 20,000 some people watching live. And then when it was done, I'm just like zapped, man, like so worn out, so glad it's over. And I sat down, and a buddy of mine walks toward me with his phone, and he's like, "Dude, look at this." He holds out his phone, and there's CNN, the front page, and there are witches sitting at the foot of Trump Tower with their candles and stuff doing this ritual.
So they did it there.
So like they really did. Yeah, like I lied just to get CNN to leave me alone, but then it really like the witches showed up. Yeah. So the whole period was just but what it made me realize, and doing a ritual, whether people believe in magic or not, doing a ritual changes the way you feel, right? I mean, everything from like smoking a cigarette to a Catholic mass, it's like a ritual. It's something that you do, and it might just change you a little bit, but it does things. And there's more research coming out that like rituals make you perform better. Like if you take a test or like there's been some great research. If someone gives a golfer a golf ball and says, "This golf ball is really lucky," they will perform better. Or that's why basketball players who do a little ritual before they take free throws, it works. Like doing rituals affects our behavior. And that's part of the reason why we do them. But with
that's why Tom Brady deflated all those footballs.
Exactly.
It's just magic, folks. Come on.
I know, pure magic, man. So my point of that long-winded exposition is that now here's where I lose my train of thought. No. So the point of that whole exposition is that ritual makes people feel different and makes people feel better. And if nothing else, I think that whole Trump binding ritual that hundreds of thousands of people did, especially the first time it was done. I mean, there was so many people all over the world at the same time doing the same ritual, and a lot of them did it monthly, and a lot of them still do it every month to this day. And what I am most happy about of all that, and putting my neck out there and all, like you said, is that it gave people a taste of like what magic is, what ritual is. And so many of them said to me, "I felt so powerless and beaten down and distressed and depressed." But when I burn a picture of that guy at the end of the ritual and I watch his face turning to ash, and then I laugh at him because the end of the ritual is like this big laughter, I feel good again. Like I feel okay. I feel like I can go do the work that I need to do, the practical work, calling Congress people and writing emails and all that sort of stuff. So that it got so big that being a writer, I'm like, I'll write a book about this. I'll talk to my agent. And he said, yeah, man, let's do it. And, went back and forth through a couple of publishers and everything. And he's like, okay, we got a publisher now. You got to write the book. And I'm like, okay, cool. So my publisher, Llewellyn, they publish a lot of like magic and witch books. It's like their thing. They said, hey, well, we really love this idea and we really want to do this and we'll give you an advance and all this, but we want it to come out before the midterm elections because it's like, political stuff and we'd love to have it come out before the midterm elections. And I was like, well, that's like 5 months.
Oh, wow.
And they go, can you do it? And I went, I guess. So it was the hardest thing I've ever done in my life was writing that book.
Bet. Yeah, that sounds tough.
And it was, it was terrifying because I thought, is it going to open me up to more crazy people?
Yeah. Did you get a lot of pushback from crazy people?
Surprisingly, no. When that ritual went viral, like I was getting death threats and stuff, which is just kind of par for the course, like emails saying what they were going to do to, it was awful on anyone who's in the public. Sadly, like that's where we are. Like you just get that, you have to expect that. But with the book, it didn't really. There was this one guy, this one Golden Dawn magician who like went off the rails after me. And it's really funny. I encourage you guys to look at it. Like if you want to laugh, it's called magicwithakWars.com. Yeah. And this guy was calling me like some kind of pedophile. I mean, all the stuff that they do. And he, but his videos are fucking hilarious, man. There's like a video that I think is crazy. There's a video that's like as crazy as like any of John Waters' like more outrageous movies that this guy did. And, it's just funny. I mean, he's so deranged and he was, he was a Trump supporter and but just absolutely deranged, like saying the most horrible, unhinged things about me. But you can just look at the guy like, dude, the guy like needs, he needs a break at some place and some medicine and, but other than that, I think really the idea of like, I think there are a lot of people, on the sort of the political left or just Democrats or whatever, who are more aligned with the idea of like witchcraft and things like that. Like witchcraft suddenly became the force of resistance. And I think part of that's due to like the ritual that I created and how fast it spread and things like that. But, a lot of people who are into witchcraft in particular have been kind of either harmed by Christianity, like fundamentalism, or they're just they felt marginalized for whatever reason, sexuality, gender, things like that. So really, I think what I gave voice to was already sort of bubbling, was like, hey, man, there's a lot of us who are not, these fundamentalist white evangelical Christians that have gotten into power and seem to love this power so much and using that power to push down other people, that I think it was like the ritual was the right thing at the right time for a lot of these people. Yeah.
Well, I don't know. I'm sure you're as unsettled as I am because it's like, here we go again with all this shit. And so you may need to like revive this, this ritual. Give it a boost or something. Cause it's like, what the fuck, man? Like
people, they've been doing it. I mean, the original ritual that I created, people have been doing it every single month. Like, I thought after the guy was out of office and after January 6th and stuff like that, I thought, all right, we can shut this down. I don't have to be up at midnight at midnight on a Tuesday night because it's the waning crescent moon, and I have to go to work tomorrow doing this ritual because it's cool now. We're okay. But we're not okay. Clearly, we're not okay. So a lot of folks are still doing this. I expect it will pick up again as we get close and deeper into the 2024 political season.
Yeah. Well, we're going to get into conspiracies now, but I'm hesitant to even say much more about it. It's just so stressful, and I'm going to be stressed out probably until maybe January of 25. Like we're looking at like a fucking year of stress for anyone who is. Yeah. There are a lot of people who are checked out, and it's like I admire you being checked out, but to me, it's like I don't know, for some reason this fucking really concerns me. Yeah,
and ultimately, it feels to me like I'm kind of a patriotic dude. I believe in democracy, and in the upper and lower D senses of the word, like But I've always had friends from different political persuasions all my life, and we've always got along fine. I mean, we might have a heated argument once in a while, but I'm like, hey, that's cool. I get where you're coming from. Things just seem so different now. It's like we're poised on the edge of like what could be the downfall of everything that democracy has meant, and watching what's happening in other countries and seeing how quickly it can happen, and watching, I'll never forget, like, for a lot of people, September 11th, and, you said we're going to talk about conspiracies, but September 11th, like, sort of killed conspiracy as far as I'm concerned. That's when things started going hard south or hard right or whatever. There had always been some elements there, but for me, January 6th was, in a way, even almost more terrifying and distressing, because these were like American citizens who were, guys with flexicuff. They were ready to murder people because they didn't agree.
A lot worse than it was. I mean, I look back on it and I think to myself, like, things like we got out of it like with probably the closest to like a best case scenario. Like,
for real. Like, I was watching that live, like, because I'm a kind of a political junkie, and I was watching that live, and I was just like screaming. I was in my office in the basement, like screaming for my wife to come down, and my mom who lives next door was coming over, and we're just all like, "Where's the National Guard? What the hell is happening? How can this be happening?" I mean, it was just. Because I was one of those people who initially believed, like, nah, he's going to leave. Like, he's going to leave office. Like, if he loses, I really believed, like, he was just going to go, all right, fuck it, man, I lost. All right, I'm going to go back to my tower and do my thing on my golden toilet. But so I was not. I mean, I had read there were respectable people who were saying, he ain't going to go. And I'm like, oh, come on, man. Like, I know he's nuts and, blah, blah, blah. He's like, he's going, there's no way. And so that day, January 6th for me is as traumatizing and unforgettable as 9/11, and, I'm happy to move on to another subject.
Yes. Well, we'll probably dabble in that as we get into this. So you wrote a really fascinating essay, which really dovetailed with a lot of my thinking, where you say good riddance to conspiracy theory. You pretty much split from the conspiracy theory community. And I think there was a long article in the New York Times recently that profiled Smiles Lewis and sort of talked about the older generation, or like the last of the real conspiracy theorists, or however you want to sort of classify it. And I know the late Ken Thomas was of the same mindset, where it was like they just kind of looked at what happened, and it was like, this isn't the conspiracy theory that we that we came up on, that we popularized or anything. It's conspiracy theories changed. It's gotten a lot darker and way too political. And also way too conspiracy theory really only works best, in my opinion, when you have the benefit of time. So I think, as you were saying, 9/11, it sort of was the first of this to be affected by this phenomenon where it was like, okay, now conspiracy theory lives in real time, and it just doesn't fucking work. It doesn't work that way. And I think that's where I became disconnected from conspiracy theory as well, where it became, it's in the now kind of thing. And, you need the benefit of time to truly understand and study conspiracy theory. Yeah.
And it's instantaneous. It's because we're all constantly online, right? And everyone is a sleuth. That's what's also kind of, it's screwing up so many criminal investigations, because you've got people online who are saying, hordes of people who are trying to be detectives about some murder and accusing innocent people who are getting hounded by online mobs and stuff like that. That's another example of that. And you're absolutely right. And I haven't really made it that clear, that point. But so that's a really excellent point, is that it's real time. And there's the issue is, the reason that's the case is that there's always chaos. Like, I work in news now, and there's always things being said. Oh, I thought, whenever there's a shooting, I swear there was another guy over in the woods right there, or whatever. Right. And it might have been the mailman, walking through from one housing development to another, but suddenly, oh my God, there were two shooters. See, they're lying to us. And that turns into, oh, those parents are crisis actors and those children didn't really die. And you've got assholes traumatizing parents who just lost their fucking kids in a mass gun murder, and telling them they're actors, And it's like, and that was the real breakup for me with conspiracy culture. Like, it was fun. I remember when Alex Jones snuck into Bohemian Grove. I made a video. That was cool. I had a friend burned it on DVD, and I would watch it and damn, those elites are, blah, 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 blah. And, a lot of it is just kind of getting a little older and getting a little smarter and realizing that how fucking difficult it is to keep something secret, especially something as monumental as oh, we didn't walk on the moon, or whatever. Do you realize how many that's what I started to sort of turn around on some of the people I knew that were getting really falling down the hole deep. It's how many people are in on this secret? How many people would have to be whatever conspiracy? And also the propensity of people, if I had some grand conspiracy, I'd go out and I'd talk to a reporter, there's just, the logic starts to fall apart. And it was always, well, they don't want you to know. Who is they? That's another question I started to turn around on these folks. That they are about. I'm well, how quantify they? How many people? How many people would be involved to be staging chemtrails? I had a guy follow me around at a conference about shoving his phone in my face every 5. What about this one? It's a chemtrail. I'm it's a contrail, dude. I grew up near a fucking airport. I know. That's what airplanes do. It depends on the weather. So. So, I started turning around these folks well, how many people would have to be involved? If, first of all, you'd have to have the guy who is installing the chemtrail unit on a commercial jet, okay? Yeah, exactly. Then you have to be the mechanics. They have to be in on it because they're the ones looking at every aspect. Well, what the hell is this thing, man? It says chemtrails on it. What the hell is that?
Plus the people who make the actual chemicals.
Right. The chemicals. The people who ship the chemicals. When you interrogate these really dumbass conspiracies, they fall apart. And I was just trying to encourage people to just, if you believe in a conspiracy, try to disbelieve it. That's always. Yeah, that's a good rule. Try to prove yourself wrong. And if the theory is true, it can withstand that. You know, you can, if you can get in the mindset of trying to disprove it, and you still can't well, then maybe you got something there. You know, maybe there's something to it. But it just, like I said, I think really 9/11 is when there's still some crazy shit about 9/11. Like, I'm not saying there's not some
a little weird, but
there might not be some stuff going on that, you know, some people in the U.S. government knew might be coming or whatever.
Right.
But it just became, and it was in real time. So you had people grabbing, you know, what was happening, and then the story would change because that's what happens.
Yeah, exactly.
Newspapers issue corrections and clarifications. Guess what? It wasn't 30 people that died. It was 29. One of those people is still in the hospital.
Yeah,
things
exactly.
like that.
Yes. You're absolutely right. Where it's like the fog of war. People, one of the old adages, conspiracy theories, is always like, pay attention to what they say right away at the very beginning. And then, you know, the more you kind of like look back on it, it's like, well, that's when people fucking don't really know anything that happens, and they're kind of like, well, they, you know, if like a school shooter or whatever, it's like, these were like kids that were like cowering behind a desk, like, you know, it's just because they said they saw like what they thought was two people run by, you know, we have videos or whatever that show they weren't. So
exactly, well, but they've been doctored too, Tim.
Right, exactly.
I understand that now.
Yeah,
they got to the videos, and you know, if you look at it frame by frame, there's 2 missing frames here, and it's just It's like self-masturbatory, and what I get though, and what I wrote in that article, like I get what it's like to be a sleuth, like an online sleuth. Right. And when I was deep in conspiracies, there was one in particular called the Hosanna Church in Ponchatoula, Louisiana. It looked like an absolute bona fide satanic cult. Like, it checked all the boxes. They found costumes in a shed by the school, and apparently there was stuff written on the walls that only showed up in black light, you know, stuff like that. And people guy walked in the sheriff's office and confesses, and I'm like, this is it, man. There's, you know, so I started chronicling this, and then I started seeing that it was kind of falling apart a little bit. Like, turns out the guy who confessed was a little kooky, and he had been talking to this woman who was, you know, in a relationship with the sheriff. You know, all this stuff that starts to come out when you, again, like you said, you take your time and you see what's happening, and you know, I just again, it was one of those sort of epiphany moments where I was just and I was watching people, and they were getting so dark and getting pulled into such dark beliefs, and the idea that like so many people are evil, you know, it's the whole QAnon, the adrenochrome, stuff like that. But I could see this bubbling, and it had always been there, like even in the early conspiracy days that I consider, like you were talking about the New York Times, right? Like the classic era Kennedy conspiracies, you know, UFO stuff.
Even moon hoax. Like, let's look, it's silly.
Yeah.
You know, I'm friends with the flat earthers, like the flat earth, like, you know, I'm a fan of any bad conspiracy theory because it's like, well, I don't need to, you know, Elvis death hoax or something like that. Sure.
Right.
Lay it on me.
Right. It just wasn't, people weren't making enemies, you know, people weren't making other people into monsters. And that's so much of what is done. Like, sure, you could say like Henry Kissinger, monster, you know, we can say Henry Kissinger did some pretty monstrous things.
Yeah.
But like when you're making out your, you know, the head of your school board to be a reptilian satanic baby eater because some unhinged idiot, you know, now has a giant megaphone and a platform to reach thousands of people, hundreds of thousands of people all over the world, something's wrong. And people are getting hurt. You know, that guy walked into Comet Ping Pong and shot up. He didn't shoot any people, thankfully. But could you imagine, like, if you're chilling out with your kids, having a pizza, playing some fucking ping pong, and some guy comes in and starts shooting up the place, demanding to see the enslaved MK Ultra children in the basement when there isn't a basement. And so
it's mind-boggling that people believe this shit, and it's distressing.
And it's easier than ever. And what I meant to say a minute ago is I understand the serotonin hit or noradrenaline hit that people get when they make a connection. Because I was into that, Louisiana, I was digging through like all kinds of local records and stuff like that. And when I'd find a connection or what felt like a connection to me, it feels good, like you're like, shit, yeah, I connected that guy to that guy. So that further proves my thesis. Exactly. And then even better is you share that. And that's why QAnon became such a phenomenon, because you make this amazing connection with your mind, like your incredible sleuthing mind. And then you share it with your buddies who are thinking the same thing. They're like, dude, you nailed it. That's amazing. We're going to put that in the FAQs, over here. Like, you're collectively feeding off each other in this frenzy of self. Again, it's like this circle jerk of
like a bubble,
self feed. You're just feeding each other on this energy, and that's part of it. And it just got so dark, and just so mean. I couldn't. I go back to like, Kennedy assassination. I mean, you could sit in a room with Kennedy assassin scholars and talk for 30 hours straight, and you're all going to be disagreeing on some stuff, but you're kind of all like generally living in the same reality. But these people, I had a woman jump on my Twitter and like, dude, adrenochrome is real. I'm like, oh my God. Hunter S. Thompson made that up in a book, like, please.
Well, it's worrisome too. It's like, there's always been sort of the one kooky sort of conspiracy theorist, but now it's like there's thousands of them, and they're all feeding on each other. And it's really I'm sure there have been documentaries made about it now, and it's the people become detached from their families. And they are so into this shit. It's like you're saying, they live in a completely different fucking reality than us.
Yeah.
And I don't even know how to, like, they need help. They need fucking
they need help. But the worst part of it, though, is it's weaponized. It's weaponized by people who know it's all bullshit. Mm-hmm. But they know that if they say, hey, Nancy Pelosi is in charge of the adrenochrome factory, and she's drank the blood of 30 babies in the past month. Some guy with a hammer is going to show up at her house and beat her husband almost into a coma. And that's what's terrifying is. And that's what's happening in every alternative community. That's why I'm such a loudmouth online. Is so many alternative spaces, whether it's UFOs, whether it's the paranormal, whether it's, new age circles, whether it's alternative healing, they're being deliberately weaponized by people. Because number one, and I'm the first to admit it, believing in UFOs, ghosts, there's a common denominator among a lot of people, and that is an element of gullibility. I've been gullible, and I've been duped, and I've recognized it in myself, and I've recognized most people, Fortean, weirdo people that have been doing this for a while. We realize how easy we realize the value of agnosticism and saying, okay, step back a little bit. But
right, but like the iconic post, I want to believe. It's like
exactly, we do. Really right. That's why we do this. That's why we love this. But that gullibility can be manipulated by smart people, and they can in turn weaponize it, which is what they're doing, which you didn't get in the heyday of conspiracies. I mean, you always had like anti-Semitic conspiracies and things like that, but there was never instant, always-on media that can constantly fill your brain with toxicity like it is today. And that's why I said I can't do it anymore. I can't be in conspiracy forums. first of all, I just got tired of like being beaten up as like a debunker or whatever, or a CIA shill or whatever. Like, bro, look, it used to be fun engaging in conspiracies, but it got to the point where it was not fun. And not only was it not fun, it was scary. It was scary watching, people I liked and people I cared about go from kind of, fairly well-adjusted individuals to believing the craziest, like David Icke, reptilian nonsense. All of a sudden, I'm like, wait, I thought I knew you, man.
Yeah. Well, it's 2 points here. First, talk a little bit about sort of, it was really disheartening reading that piece because you did a point-by-point like breakdown of why this Pizzagate thing is bullshit. We don't need to revisit that, but when you tried to like spread the word, it was like various other media outlets in this podcasting sphere fucking, kind of gave you the short shrift here. And it was like, the treatment alone is shitty. And the other part's just like, how the fuck can they even believe this Pizzagate thing in the first place? Like, that to me was almost more offensive than the fact that they like wouldn't like, oh man, how they gave you the runaround. It was like they're giving him the runaround because they believe this fucking shit. Are you kidding me?
Yeah.
This is crazy. Like
it separated the wheat from the chaff for me. Like it really did.
Sure.
Like
absolutely.
and it ended friendships. But my basic break with conspiracy, part of the reason was because I was watching friendships end, and people I respected, podcasters who used to talk about, consciousness and UFOs and all that. Suddenly they're talking about adrenochrome and Q drops and how, Democrats are Satanist and spirit cooking and all this stuff. And it sucked. I mean, there were a lot of people that I used to respect and I lost respect for. They lost respect for me, and that's fine. But it became clear to me that this toxicity was more widespread than just, little communities. Like it really had metastasized. And it really, people were like, why don't you, it's your little strident, man. Why do you have to, let that guy talk about his crazy, evil conspiracies where he's, literally demonizing human beings and things like that. I said, I can't do that. This is my community too. And I believe, and I still believe this, is that if you put something out there, if you have a podcast, if you write an article, if you post something on friggin' Facebook, you're putting your ideas out into the world, and your ideas can be challenged, and they should be challenged. It's not censorship. People are like, oh, you're for censorship. You don't. No, I'm not for censorship. But if some guy is saying that, Barack Obama is the descendant of Nazis and, and he's a robot or whatever, like, I'm going to say, you're full of shit, man. Like, this is nonsense. And I do, like, it's not deplatforming anybody. It's not censoring someone. If you just challenge their ideas, and that's what, if someone's going to publish a podcast and they're going to say these things, then they should expect people to engage with what they're saying. Like, it's not all about people saying, yes, you're great, we love you. If you actually have any sort of intellectual rigor or just general decency, you will listen to criticism. Like sure. If you don't listen to criticism, then what's the point?
Right, exactly. Then you just, then
it's a cult, otherwise,
then it goes beyond belief. It turns into faith or something like that. Well, you saw the same kind of thing in a way with the COVID issue. Because there's a lot of people, I saw a lot of people sort of break off into the other side. And I'm just like, why? I just don't buy it. Again, it also sort of goes to like the recency thing. It's like, I'll wait. You know, maybe if someone digs some shit up in like 5 or 10 years that details how all this was hoax, then sure, maybe I'll get on board with it. But it's like, right now, I'm just trying to fucking live through this, dude.
Right.
So I'm going to wear a mask. Like, fucking.
Yeah, is that real? Was it really asking that much anyway? Like a piece of cloth on my face, is that much of an assault on someone else's idea of freedom? Like, dude. Yeah. I mean, COVID also. I mean, I think I wrote that piece before COVID, and COVID just exploded everything into. You know, that's when things just, I think, broke in a way that it's almost impossible to fix. And
I agree with you there.
And part of it is we were online all the time. What'd you do? You got up, you went to work on your, you know, for a lot of people, not lucky people got to get up, turn on your computer, you're talking to people all day long. And then you're like, oh man, check Facebook, check Twitter, what's on Reddit. Oh, my buddy just sent me this message that COVID's is a hoax, and it's so it just, that's when, like, 9/11 was a fracture, and then COVID was when everything just broke into hundreds of pieces, and putting all the pieces together is hard, really hard. Yeah,
there's a real schism in our society, and you can kind of, like, without stereotyping people, you can kind of break it down. Like, it's like the QAnon, the COVID deniers, the Trumpies, they're all on that fucking side. Like, I don't know too many. Once you get in on that, you're in on the whole fucking deal.
Yeah, it's
part of the weaponizing you're talking about too. Where
it's like religion, and it has cult aspects to it. I agree with you. It's like people say, well, you got to listen to both sides and all that. Like, I do listen to both sides.
I have listened to
and one side's fucking nuts, man. You know, like one side is just so completely off the rails as far as reality. Yeah. I don't need to listen to, like, I don't need to, like, engage and have a dialogue with them, because they're too far gone. And I believe people can. I've seen people who have been deprogrammed from cults, and it's a difficult process because it becomes your lifestyle. It becomes everything in your life. It's who you are. It's your identity, and that's hard to pull yourself out of, you know. And it happens to, you know, it's not just extreme, you know, right wing. It can happen in, you know, religious ways or spiritual ways, or, you know, there can be people pulled into, you know, left wing delusions equally. It just so happens that the vast majority at this point in history is like, it has fallen off the cliff in the other direction. So, you know, I'm not here to say nothing, you know, I'm always right, or, you know, the Democrats have every answer or anything like that. I just miss the old system where people could argue
about policy.
Argue about policies and things like that, instead of literally dehumanizing other people and calling them demons and whipping up hysteria and violence. And it's like one of the important terms I learned years ago is like stochastic terrorism. That means that's like, you don't have to be the guy that pulls the trigger in that crowd. But if you're the guy who put that idea in that guy's mind, if you're the person who made that guy believe that that's the way you kill monsters, like you're playing a fucking video game or something, then it's your you know, you're the stochastic terrorist. You started that chain. You put that idea, that dangerous idea, in that dude's head.
You see a lot of that nowadays, like just just dangerous. Like you're saying, the dehumanizing of people is really worrisome and troubling, and, you know. It's just
it freaks me out.
It's disheartening too. It's disheartening because it's like, man, these people, you know, we're all really people at the end of the day, and it's like, if you could just fucking, you know, get over your fucking crazy paranoia. Like, we're all just normal people. We're all just trying to get through the fucking day here, dude.
Yep.
Yeah.
A part of it too is like demographically, the world is changing. Yeah. And the people who've been in control, the people who was, it used to be normal to, like, if you're writing a novel or something, you would say, the man came in and he was black. Like you would, as if the default is everyone is white, and, or, the idea that, like, two people the same sex could be in love and married and things like that. It used to, like, the people who ran the show for so long, it was those people who said, oh, that's gross, or, yes, the black people live over on that side of town, but we're the real people over. So, I mean, it was kind of baked in, that sort of white Christian straight, is just the way the world is, and that's the way it is. And those people's numbers are going down. And
they're freaking out over it.
And they're freaking out about that. And the more they freak out about it, the more they kind of fulfill the idea that people are against them, because they start doing shitty things to other people, and it just becomes this, like, and so what scares me is I really believe that, like, most people in this country are pretty decent. Most people in the world are, like, decent people, golden rule. They just want to get up. They just want to do their thing and be left alone.
They'll help their neighbor. They'll help their fucking neighbor.
Right. Yeah. And the crazy QAnon extremists will do that too.
Right. Exactly.
For their neighbors that are like them. But the world is changing, and I feel like there's a group of people who are really intensely terrified about that. It comes out in, dipshits like Tucker Carlson saying they're bringing in the brown people, they want the white people all gone, and great replacement theory and stuff like that. It's like, that's not true, man. It's just the world is changing, and if you were gonna push back against the world changing, then that sucks for you, because you'll be the angry old man yelling at clouds when you're next door, the two nice married men next door, come over and rake your leaves because they're nice people, right? And exactly. You're an old guy and stuff like that. So so that's this idea that it's so sad to watch the divisiveness, knowing that for a lot of people, it's deliberately stoked in them. Yes, it's deliberately stoked by people who should know better, from propagandists. Right. Yes, and the fact that we've seen this all before, and like these types of extremist movements, whether it's on the left, whether it's on the right, they all work the same way. It's the same playbook. You turn a segment of the population into you other them. You make them responsible for all the ills, whether it's Jews, blacks, whatever, and then you take people's anxieties about the economy, about the state of the world, about their family, and you just turn it against the scapegoat.
Yeah, just whip them up. Yeah,
and it just, for as amazing as human beings are, we're also pretty stupid and easily swayed and programmable. I love watching documentaries about cults. I don't know if you've watched some of these shows, man, but we're living in the golden era of cult analysis, because so many of these cults now videotape everything, and so when they fall apart and when shit goes ballistic, we have a record of that now, or like the NXIVM cult, or the one I just watched. Yeah. So I mean, it was documented because they were all filming each other all the time.
Yeah, it was crazy how much was filmed. It was like, holy shit. I was wondering that too. I'm trying to figure it out now. It's like, how did they
It's just like,
dead body in the car and shit.
Right. Yeah. It's
like, is this on the air? Oh my god.
So for like as amazing as people are, we fall for the same stupid tricks all the time. And that's what's depressing, watching the extremists in this country, falling for the same tactics, only with the internet. And with our ability, this beautiful thing, this beautiful ability of the internet to connect with each other, it's also like the most powerful propaganda tool. And it's just it's discouraging. So that's why I broke up with conspiracy.
There you go. And part of the problem, I think, and I've hammered this on the show multiple times, it's like the internet has like shattered our shared reality, and people kind of just go off on their own fucking thing. And it's cool to have interests and all that, but it's like they don't. I don't know. It's just like there's no shared. Because something like my brother was giving me shit because I always watch the Macy's Thanksgiving parade. He's like, "Why do you even watch this, like for kids or whatever?" It's like it's one of the few things we all can still do together. It's like some kid in Des Moines watching this, and an old guy in Tallahassee's watching this. It's like it's part of the shared reality of the culture.
Right.
There are very few things left like that nowadays. It's
really
disjointed.
Instead of watching that, somebody's firing up, some crazy UFO guy who's UFO cult talking about how they all need to come to Colorado and be raptured with him or something. That you're right. It's like we used to have these touchstones. Or even, another example is, remember as a kid, like, oh man, the Grinch is coming on tonight, and and you would know all around the world, all across the U.S., in your time zone, all these kids are watching the same thing. And you're right, we've become like splintered so much that if you do decide to become like conspiracy is going to be your thing, you can do that 24/7. Like from the minute you wake up in the morning and take out your phone to the minute you put your phone down in bed that night, you can be in it all the time, constantly bombarded with that.
Right. Yeah. And then you're like, I don't have time for fucking the Grinch. I'm like, I'm doing God knows what.
The Grinch was one of them, man. It's exactly. Monarch programming.
Yeah. So that's why. And then when things do get big, then they get divisive. Where it's like, oh, Taylor Swift. Who the fuck could hate on Taylor Swift? She's wonderful.
Right.
She's a good person.
I'm not a huge fan of her music, but I love that so many people love her. That's awesome. Yeah, good for her.
Oh man. Well, now
she drinks the blood too. So yeah, she's one of them.
She's part of a mass mind control experiment or some shit. It's like. What, empower women? Sure. I'd go for it. I don't know what the fuck the problem is, dude. Like, that's... Oh, man. Anyways. UFOs. Now, you're really bullish on UFOs. I've actually... I wouldn't say we've tangled it all online, but I've tried to, because I'm super cynical about what's going on, but you're super excited. And I like that about you. Maybe you're less excited than last time.
I'm definitely less excited. I am far less excited. And I've always been cynical anyway because I've been around for so long. I've watched I've watched things peak and fade, and I remember when daytime, not daytime TV, but like daytime TV talk shows had abductees on in the 90s, and people were taking it seriously. And then that kind of went up in flames, and no one took that seriously for a long time. But yeah, what did make me excited and why I was sort of reinvigorated on the topic, I did think the New York Times front page coverage of the Nimitz and all that stuff was a change. It was not yes, mainstream media did cover UFOs fairly seriously at different points in time, in the 50s, in the 70s. But for me, it felt sort of like things were a little different when that article came out. Like suddenly the topic was being discussed in places it hadn't been for a very long time. Outside of late night Coast to Coast and things like that. It was
treated seriously.
It was treated seriously again. Yeah. Right. But what I've seen happen and why my cynicism has returned. Like, my fascination with UFOs will always be there. And my beliefs have mutated and morphed over the years. You know, I went from being real nuts and bolts when I was a kid because that's all there was, to being more, well, there's more of a paranormal aspect to this. And so I was full on complete dismissal of the ETH for a long time. Then I started coming back a little bit, like, well, maybe, you know, there is some physical dimension to this. Clearly, there's something physical going on. And honestly, if there are extraterrestrials, if that turns out to be what's behind this, like Arthur Clarke Law says, that shit would look pretty magical and paranormal, because we don't understand it. So I've gone back and forth, and I had a long series of podcasts with Soraya and Josh and Red Pill and, you know, that whole crew for a while. Yeah. It was just so fun to, like, bounce ideas back and forth off those guys. But I am so sick of ufology and online UFO Twitter and things like that in particular now. It's a shit show of shit shows, man. Like, I was kind of, when David Grush in particular, his testimony, and watching what happened after that and what hasn't happened after that. And also from people I know that I trust, who are associated with, like, the governmental stuff going on, looking into this. There's something really messed up going on right now. It's, first of all, I'm very queasy about the people in government who are climbing on board the topic. They skew very heavily into some of that kind of extremist weirdo territory. So I think some of them are exploiting this issue. Also, like, I get a lot of grief. I'm sure Leslie Kane would love to, like, kick me out of a helicopter because of how much grief I've given her for going on Tucker Carlson so much. Because I'm like, look, man, this is a guy who is saying that, like, basically saying that there is a plot to get rid of white people. And that's Tucker Carlson. And yes, he talks about UFOs, but if you go and sit and talk to Tucker Carlson, first of all, do you know you're talking to all those people who are also there for the scary, racist, you know, extremist, anti-democracy, fascist kind of stuff. But you're also, like, do you think he doesn't know that you coming on and talk about UFOs gets a ton of people watching, and that those ton of people that are watching might tune in the next day too and go, oh, great replacement theory. Oh, maybe the Jews really do want to get rid of all the rest and things like that. So I get a raft of shit every time I do it. But anytime one of these guys, you know, even like, you know, fairly reasonable people, not the total knuckleheads I won't name, but when they go on a show, I'm like, man, do you really have to do that? Like, are UFOs really that important? Like, and Leslie Kane said to me, she said, well, you know, UFOs transcend politics. I'm like, that's cool. Well, then why don't you, like, but Tucker Carlson doesn't transcend politics.
Exactly.
You know? Exactly. And you're legitimizing this dude's other stuff when you do this. Like, you sit down at like, there used to be a saying, like, what happens when a Nazi walks in a bar and he's not kicked out? Like, suddenly you have a bar full of Nazis. Yeah. You know? Right. Or what happens when a Nazi sits down at dinner? Then there's a dinner table full of Nazis, you know, like, there are some people that you just really should, like, say no thanks, you know, like, exactly. I'd rather not.
These people, the UFO buffs, they're like, oh, this person's going to be on Tucker, are going to watch the thing, and then they go, well, I know this guy's right about fucking UFOs because I believe in the UFOs. I'm certain. There's a level of certainty among these UFO people that it's like, you know, let's not be so sure. We don't fucking know what they are, dude.
Right. And the more,
Tucker, if Tucker is right about this thing I know. Maybe he's right about this other stuff that I never considered before. And then it's like, oh shit.
And Tucker knows that. And all these, I won't say all, but a lot of the kind of real extremist political people, do you remember Ernst Zundel? You remember that? Have you ever heard that dude?
From the old,
Jeff Rentz. I remember that. That's when I first caught a whiff that something stinky in ufology, man. Because I used to read Jeff Rentz and I'd be like, oh, he's got an article about the Holocaust on here, and then I dig a little deeper. I'm like, oh, he's got an actual article by a literal Nazi from Nazi Germany, just posted on here too. Isn't that? And this guy, Ernst Zundel, was all about Nazi UFOs. So he'd suck people in with stories about Nazi UFOs. And then, by the way, the Holocaust it's kind of bullshit, man. It didn't really happen. And it's a honeypot, that's the honeypot idea that will pull you in with UFOs for breakfast. And hey, it's lunchtime. Have a Nazi sandwich. But as of current ufology, it's become again another circle jerk. I hate to keep using that, but it really that's the only metaphor that makes sense to me of these same people who just keep teasing information, saying, yes, it's coming. Man, we've heard that since you and I were little kids, that disclosure is coming. And it's just, there's so much you could just smell the bullshit coming from these folks. And I just don't buy it, man. I feel like I don't necessarily believe that it's from a governmental level targeting people for disinformation,
it's hard to fathom what's behind all this.
It's hard, it really is because it's mystifying. And like I said, I have a couple of people I know who I trust who are sort of on the inside of a lot of those discussions, and they won't tell me anything, of course. They can't tell me anything, but from what they don't tell me, I get the feeling that there is some real humbuggery going. There's just some lying and disinformation being spread on purpose, and I'm not sure why. I'm really not sure why. I don't trust anyone who says they're doing this because of this or I just don't. Once again, I'm just thrown into agnosticism, but I have more mistrust when it comes to the UFO discussion, the official kind of UFO stuff, than I do for a lot of other subjects. Something feels off and fishy, and it's just boring now.
It's super
I mean, seeing Bob Lazar recycled ad nauseum. What is this? Is this 1994? Am I listening to the radio late at night, or is this 2023? And people are still saying the same shit and recycling the same nonsense. And it's depressing, man.
I've tried to differentiate almost on the show here, where it's they want UAP, they can fucking have it. So I just consider that the UAP community, because the UAP is just what the government fucking sees, apparently, and it involves the government. So and it's I'm just mystified sometimes. You go there, just the community that's sprung up online in a way too. And it's these people, they're very argumentative. Mm-hmm. It's look, dude, I am far from a skeptic or a debunker. If anything, I'm not even a skeptic or a debunker of the aliens per se. I'm a skeptic or debunker of the idea that they're going to fucking never tell us. There's a very big distinction between the two things. I'm on your side, UFO Twitter. I'm fucking on your side. I just don't see, and I don't see sort of any discussion ever of what comes after the fucking disclosure.
Yeah.
I know Rich Dolan wrote a book 15 years ago. Put that aside. I mean, in this new era, no one's okay, well, what are we going to do when the government fucking tells us? Should there be laws? Do we need to fucking change? Like, you don't hear any discussion about that sort of thing. It's just like, tell us.
Yep. Or recycling what people have said, like you said, 20, 30 years ago. Same stuff. There's nothing substantial coming out of it. I think that's my biggest gripe. It's just a lot of heat and noise, like you said, and arguing. And I've yet to see anything move the needle. Now, yes, the fact that there are congressional hearings, awesome. Like, bring more of that, please. That's great. But has anything transpired because of that? No, nothing's new. And again, what is there ever going to be a disclosure? Are we ever going to know the answer to this? I don't know. I've certainly, for my entire life, I've heard, man, we're right on the edge of it, and it's coming, and whistleblowers, and et cetera. And I see us no closer at all. I think it's cool that we've got some tantalizing video that officially from government sources. That's cool. I mean, I like that pilots and military people are more talking about it, but they were, sure. Mike with Salas had people in Las Vegas how many years ago? Yeah. Talking about nuclear power plants and things like that. So it just feels like we're in like the Groundhog Day loop, and I've just kind of like not lost interest, but I've just lost the mental capacity to go through all that back and forth with people all the time.
It's
you know what I mean?
Now, it's very involved, and like I know that there was this legislation. The legislation got fucked up, and it's like, look, as soon as I hear legislation, like I don't fucking care. Like I'm out. So just tell me what y'all decide to do, and let us know. It's just, but it's all they're in a frenzy online. Oh, the legislation. Oh, this guy's going to shoot down the legislation. It's like I don't have time for all that, man.
Right.
And it's like I said earlier, we've seen this movie before. Yeah, sure. But I will kind of agree with you. I think when you were more optimistic, it's like, yes, this is the best version of the fucking movie I've seen so far. But I've seen the fucking movie. It's like Spider-Man. It's like, okay, this is now that you got all the technological shit, and this is the best version of Spider-Man I've seen so far. And you know what? In like 10 years, you'll be able to like walk through the fucking Spider-Man movie or whatever. And it'll
you'll be able to swing. Exactly. You will be Spider-Man. Yeah. It's I don't know. I mean, I feel like the internet has brought us so much, and to see it, I'm really disillusioned with where we ended up. And I know part of that is based on the algorithm feeds on dissent. And I mean, Facebook, basically, there's been some great work done by journalists on this. Like they said, what gets people excited is when what makes people click and stay on the platform is when they're arguing with people.
Right.
So they monetized and incentivized that algorithm, that style of making people angry, and it works. It's dopamine, adrenaline, just like the conspiracy sleuthing thing, and we get addicted to it. And that's what I feel like UFO Twitter in particular has become. There's no light. It's all heat, and it's just the same recycled stuff over and over again. I would love for there to be a breakthrough. Like I would love like when Oumuamua came through the solar system, and Avi Loeb was like, that could be a piece of extraterrestrial technology, whatever. That was fascinating, and I would love for Rendezvous with Rama, Arthur Clarke, the spaceships to appear, Independence Day, as long as they didn't incinerate us. I would love
Team Alien for sure. Yeah,
right. We've all thought that maybe someday that might happen, and I would still love for there to be. I would love for some Joe Biden to walk out and go, "Guess what, folks? Guess what? There's aliens. We've known it all this time. Been hiding this shit." Be nice to each other. Please don't go crazy and kill each other. Yeah, we'll have more video tomorrow for you. Yeah, and honestly, most people I think might be like, oh yeah, cool, all right.
Still got to go to work.
I figured they were. Yeah, right. Still got to get up at 7 o'clock. My asshole boss will yell at me. Yada yada. What's the difference? So, I think it would be revelatory and be the biggest thing that could ever possibly happen. I would love to see it. I love reading fantasy and science fiction about it, but I'm just cynical, like you said earlier, cynical, jaded, and the more I see would look like a little bit of momentum just kind of fractioning out and spiraling off like it always does. I just, we'll see.
Yeah. It's a wild reality show because it's very reactionary. All you can do is sort of watch the show. So
right. Yeah. Yeah. It's from afar. I don't want to get too close because it's too incendiary in there.
I think you touched on something that made me think. It's like, I think people, I guess partially why I sort of, there's friction there, I guess, with the online UFO community where it's just like, you guys got to just temper your expectations. Just do not fucking, if you are so invested in the belief that this is going to happen, like you could really be setting yourself up for some really hurt feelings down the line and disillusionment and, I mean, that New York Times article came out like 6 years ago. We're not any closer to what we wanted to know back when the article came out.
Yep.
And I think there was an article this past weekend, and it's a point I made on the show. I don't know if it's one that's aired yet or one that's going to be airing in the future. But it's like, if this is, they say, these UFO advocates, this is the biggest story, and it is, really. It would be the biggest story in the history of human civilization. And then at the same time, they're like, but I signed this paperwork. And it says I can't tell you that it's true. And it's like, look, dude, if this is the biggest story in the history of human civilization, if you have proof, now is the fucking time. Like, come on, man. They're not going to throw you in prison. And if they do, you will be beloved by a sizable amount of the population, not just UFO buffs. Like, the general public will be like, free Randy Tucker Jones or whatever because he's the guy that had the balls to tell us about the aliens. Fuck you, government. Let him out of prison. Whatever. Then they got to clean up their mess. Or, you know what I mean? So it's like, look, dude, it's easy for me to say. I wouldn't want to be in the middle of fucking some national security held in Guantanamo Bay because I broke the fucking sacred alien oath. But look, now's the time, man. If this is such a big story, break the fucking sacred alien oath.
Yep. So. And I've met so many people over. I feel like most curious, intelligent people understand there's something going on. Right. And what I learned from talking about it and giving public talks and things like that is that when you talk about it and you talk about it without any sense of ridicule or silliness, people open up about it. Every single time I've done a public UFO talk, there's always somebody who's like, can I tell you what I saw this one time? Can I tell you this story? Whatever. I had a woman who was who used to be a flight attendant who came up to me after one of my talks. She's like, will you please take these drawings that I made? I've held on to this for years. I've been too afraid to tell anybody. I don't want to get fired. And even when I was in my 20s, I was dating this woman, and her father was like a real salt of the earth, ex-military guy, super conservative, nice guy. But when I had my UFO sighting with that woman who I was dating at the time, when we got back to her house after that, I was like, we told her dad. We were so freaked out. We had to just tell everybody we ran into. Yeah. And I thought for sure the guy was going to say, what were you guys smoking? We were smoking, but smoking weed does not make you see lights in the sky. I'm sorry, say that right now. Right. And as a matter of fact, I felt extremely sober the instant I saw those lights. It kind of like killed any buzz that I might have possibly had. But he didn't say that. He didn't say, what were you smoking? Are you silly kids? He said, he's like, I never told you, Elizabeth. He said, but when I was a kid, I saw this thing come over a cornfield. It was a silver disc. And it went right over our heads really slowly. The field me and this kid were playing in. And we were quoted in my local paper in Des Moines or whatever, you know. And that's when I think all this disclosure stuff and all this back and forth, it's really, like I said, heat and not a lot of light. But but when you talk to people, I think the idea that something is going on.
Right.
Most people think aliens because that's culturally what we've been fed. And and I think it's very, you know, it makes sense to think it could be aliens. These things are flying around in the sky and maybe not from here. But I think despite all, you know, when you look outside of UFO Twitter, we've, as a society, are starting to find it acceptable. The average person, there are the loud skeptics and debunkers, and there are the lunatics on the other side. David Icke, they're reptilian, whatever.
Yeah.
But I think most curious, intelligent people who aren't dogmatic about the issue can really think there's something going on and accept that. So I feel like culturally, people are kind of understanding of it and okay with it and give some credence to there's something to the phenomenon. So I try to remind myself that culturally we are progressing. I think we are kind of progressing in that sense.
Yeah, for sure.
And that these
freer now to contemplate the mystery.
Yeah.
Yes. Back 10, even 10 or 15
that's a perfect way to put it. And that's why, like magic and occultism and tarot and things like that, I think people are just in general are a little more open to just non-strictly physical reductionist beliefs because we've all had experiences. As you know, when you talk about this stuff, people will contact you and go, man, I saw a ghost. You know, the more you talk about it, the more you realize that most people, if they haven't had an experience themselves, have some sort of unexplained thing happen to them.
Yeah.
Near-death experience, haunting, UFO sighting, ESP.
Yeah. If you're lucky, you run into someone who saw Bigfoot. That's like the
right. Yeah,
it's like, oh wow, really? Tell me about this fucking Bigfoot sighting. That's a good one.
Yeah, exactly. So as a culture, I think we're becoming more. We're becoming better at accepting strange realities, non-ordinary experiences and things. Psychedelic, the increase in psychedelics, I think, is another manifestation of that. You know, people looking and thinking, well, maybe I can take ayahuasca and help solve a problem that I have, and maybe because there are plant spirits or there's a lot, of course there's, as we know because we've been in this, there's a lot of horse shit, a lot of quackery, a lot of culty weirdos in this field, but in general a lot of more people are open to thinking about things that were maybe a little people tried to push them under the rug, or you felt like you had to hide some of it in the past. So I feel like we're making progress. Yeah. At the same time, the UFO Twitter is just devolving into just nonsense.
Well, I see people that just post all fucking day of just their feeds just UFO stuff, and it's like, as the kids say, you gotta get out and touch grass, man. You gotta,
exactly. Take a walk around the block, bro. Yeah.
And I think you kind of touched on it just a little bit, but we'll wrap up the UFO stuff and get to the end of the show here. But the Gersh thing was interesting. It was like, okay, but it was like, okay, he's the appetizer. You gotta bring something to the fucking table here after this. Like, nothing's, and I know the shit moves slow or whatever, so maybe we'll see something, but it's like, okay, well, we need the guys that told him this shit to talk, because apparently this is not that great. You know, he's just repeating shit that he already heard. So it's like,
right.
You know, and you would think they made such a big deal out of this. And again, I understand things move slowly, but it's like, okay, this guy's making some outrageous fucking claims. He said them in Congress. The Congress people were like, okay, guys, I said on the wall, we'll go to the broom closet and fucking, you can tell us in the ultra secret. It's like, well, what the fuck happened? Right?
Where's the beef, man?
Yeah. If you're an average person on the street, you're like, well, whatever became of that? Apparently fucking nothing.
Right.
Apparently he testified before Congress. He heard all this shit. He said he couldn't tell them unless it was in the broom closet. They got him in the broom closet, and what? Nothing fucking happened? So, you know, and I'm sure the ardent UFO Twitter people might be like, well, you see, this thing, and then they did the thing, but he said he couldn't do, and da-da-da-da. And it's like, yeah, I'm good.
Yep.
I'm really fucking
We've
good.
seen this show before. Like I said, we've seen this reality TV show before. And I'm only interested when you bring me some goods.
Yeah, show me the alien.
Lay something out on the table. Yeah. Like I could make up some incredible stories that I heard from some guy high in government, you know, and is someone going to believe me? Like, there's nothing substantive has come out of this so far, except for people saying that there will be something substantive. Oh, trust us, just hang on there. And there's a whole cottage industry of these dudes. Yeah. And it is dudes. And they're just like, well, you know, trust him because I heard from this person, and trust us, 2024 is going to be the year. Yeah, sure. Okay. I sure hope so, because if 2025 comes, I'm going to throw, you know, I just don't know what to do anymore. Yeah.
It's interesting, too. Like, they say that, again, they all kind of, like I said, they don't really talk about what the post-disclosure is going to be. And at the same time, it's like they always fucking dance around what they really mean. Aliens. They mean fucking aliens.
Right.
But they don't ever say it. They always just kind of dance around it. Oh, the government's going to fucking, a lot of shit's going to be revealed. Revealed about what? Aliens. Just fucking say it. Can we just get, like, it's very weird. The whole thing is very fucking,
although I have to say, Grush is, I don't know how you pronounce it. I think, he said, I mean, I was kind of surprised when he started saying, well, these might not be physical beings. They could be interdimensional and all that. And people say, and like, I'm sure that perked up the ears of a lot of folks in this community. Like, oh, good. You know, we're finally getting the idea that they're not just physical aliens. But you know what? He could have read that on those bulletin boards in 1993 that I was posting to. People were saying the same thing. So that's not revelatory. I don't really trust. And his talk about, some people have died because of this. Like, well, if you're serious about that, then you really should be naming the people who died. Like, don't say you can't do it. It goes back to your point. And I just don't trust I don't trust him. I don't trust some of the, I trust some of those pilots. I trust a guy that was on the ship, you know, who talked about later the radar and things. I tend to trust those guys. I don't really trust people who are like, well, I've been in the intelligence community and people have told me these stories. Therefore they're true. Well, people tell all kinds of stories. There are just as many dumbasses in the intelligence community as there are anywhere else in this country. I mean, put something on the table, or I've just lost. I'm getting up in age. I'm not a sprightly young conspiracy guy anymore. I've only got so much capacity left in my brain because, you know, some of the self-abuse things I've done to it over the years. But just because, like, I just can't handle it anymore. I can't. I have, like, the section in my brain that I can shove bullshit into is just tiny. You know, it's burned out. All those neurons are toast. So so I can't sit and scroll through UFO Twitter all day. I like I have a life. I mean, I'd rather touch grass, like the kids say. I'd rather, I'd rather stare into the air, honestly, than go through some of those back and forths.
Yeah, show us the fucking alien. That's all. I wonder too, if we can't be the only people that feel. I wonder if the general public is starting to get. I very crassly call it. I can't. If someone can just suggest a better. Disclosure blue balls. It's like I feel like the public may be getting closer to that point of view too, where it's like, look, how long are we going to keep fucking talking about these things? Like,
right.
Really.
Well, but how many people
getting the aliens?
Right. How many people even pay attention though? Like we're in the weirdo silo where people pay attention to this stuff. Right. So we're immersed in it, and we see that the constant infighting and bickering. But the average schmo who's, he's got out of work, he goes to the bar, has a couple beers, comes home, puts on Netflix. He doesn't know anything about any of this stuff.
Right,
People who are, studying for their PhD in microbiology, they're not paying attention to that.
Right.
And so I feel like, I think a lot of us have the disclosure blue balls for sure. I think people who peripherally pay attention to it probably just like, whatever. If the UFO comes, if on Facebook tomorrow they got pictures of the alien, then I'll believe it.
Yeah.
Until then, I'm
invested in it either way. Yeah.
Right. I've got The Bachelor to watch or whatever. Where the price is right.
There you go. Now, before I let you go, there was a question that if I don't ask, then I'm gonna be like, shit, I fucking, it'll bother me for the rest of the night. So, when you were talking about your time as a mentalist, and if the really close listeners will hear me say earlier, I sort of threw in a without, and then I just kind of was like, I'll let you go. I'm gonna get to this question. So, without giving away sort of the secret. Per se, you did these mentalist shows, and you said they were tricks, and so what is an example of I've never been to a mentalist show. What is I've seen a magician, obviously.
But
what is a mentalist? Give me an example. I guess you could say, without giving away how it's done. But what would be an example of?
Okay, I'll give you a good example. This is the thing. This seems so impossible to be a trick.
Yeah.
What I would do is I would go out to 3 people in the audience, randomly select them, no stooges or anything like that. Let's say you're sitting in the audience. Okay. I give you a little index card in an envelope, and I say, write the name of a friend of yours from elementary school, good friend of yours, and think of that person. Try to visualize the person, write their name on the piece of paper. Fold it up, put it in the envelope, seal the envelope. No way I could look inside. I do that for 3 people. Take the envelopes, put them the insight of everyone the whole time, put them on a little table in front of me, and I go, okay, Julie, I ask you to think of a pet when you were a child. What's let me guess. Try to project that thought to me, and she would say, I'd go, okay, it was a dog, right? She'd go, yeah. Well, it was a dog. I'd go, okay, cool. Think of the first letter of the dog's name. Okay, it's an S, wasn't it? She'd go, oh my God, yes, it was an S. And I'd go, think of the sound of the dog's name. She'd go, okay, I'm thinking of it. I'd go, Scrappy. And she goes, oh my God, my God. And I would do that for each person. I'd come to you and say, okay, your friend from elementary school was a kid. It was a boy. Yeah. And his name was Steve. And you would go, oh my God. Yeah. And sometimes I would go a little deeper and go, okay, this guy, his name was Steve. Did he have reddish brown hair? And you go, yeah, he had sort of brown hair. Was he a little awkward? So what I would do is, and it looks completely impossible. Like, how could I have known that? I didn't look in the envelopes. And after I'd say, oh, your friend was Steve, I'd open the envelope, pull it out, and hold it up, and you had written Steve right there to show people we're not like, communicating secretly, or you're not a setup or anything like that. So it's things like that. It's actual mind reading. And there's a couple. Wow. If you ever get a chance to talk to these folks or have them on your show, or they're called the Evasons, Evasons. They do a classic psychic mind reading show, and it's got like mind reading, hypnosis. It's cool. Even spirit photography. They do a spirit photograph, like live with like a Polaroid camera. It's so good. And what they do is an act where it's a husband and wife, and the woman goes out into the crowd, and she'll go, give me something out of your pocket. Or the guy will go out in the crowd, give me something out of your pocket. And you reach in and you pull out a bottle opener that says, I don't know, Schlitz on it, right?
Yeah, yeah.
And he will hold that, and he'll say to her, what am I holding? And she'll go, it's metal. It's about 4 inches long. And she go, tell him to concentrate on it. And he's like, okay, he's concentrating on it. She goes, there's some words written on it. Letter S. It's a bottle opener, and it says Schlitz. And the whole time he hasn't said, it's just like, you just say, oh my God, they have to be reading each other's minds. And it's to me, it's like the most fascinating aspect of magic. It's like some guy does a card trick, and you're like, okay, dude, you're a really good card magician.
Yeah.
But when I say, think of a friend of yours, think of the name of a friend of yours from elementary school you're really good friends with in like third grade, and I say Steve, and you go, holy shit, my friend Steve, we were like best friends. That's hard to explain. Like that's more believable in a strange way, because it's not.
This is a trick.
They're brilliant. And the best thing about mentalism is when you become a mentalist and you understand, you kind of like work your way up through the ranks, and people start giving you the really good ways of doing things.
Yeah.
The more you realize like how simple and just like, if I told you how I did some of these tricks, you go, oh my God, that's fucking, I can't believe that. Yeah. Because it appears so magical, but in fact, it's so banal, like not banal, but.
No, I've gotten that before.
Yeah. But it's just, so that's, and I know we're getting to the end. But I have to say that the strange thing about mentalism as opposed to magic is sometimes the mentalism is real. Like there are accounts of mentalists who were doing tricks and they screwed it up, and they did it right anyway. Like, so weird. Mentalists believe in psi phenomena a lot more than magicians do. Like magicians, because it's all, there are a lot, not all. And it never, like, it's gotten that reputation because of like Penn and Teller and James Randi and shit like that. But it wasn't always that way. Like a lot of George Hansen, I don't know if you know George Hansen. He wrote Trickster in UFO, in the paranormal. He's a magician, and he wrote a really cool paper about magicians who believed in psychic phenomena and psychic stuff, because a lot of them do, and a lot of them it's in mentalism is because you screw up the trick. And you got to go, oh, okay, maybe, I guess it was, I'll try to really psych out. Was it Steve? Yes. And you're right. So anyway, mentalism is cool. It's fun stuff.
All right. Well, we've gone well over the 2 hours here. So I'm going to wrap it up here, man. I feel like we could talk for a lot longer. So you're going to be back on Binnall of America, I hope, if you'll accept the invitation in the future.
Oh, man. I love it. There's nothing I love more than like these kinds of conversations, and I've been wanting the opportunity to do this with you in particular. As you said, we only got to chat for a few hours into the wee hours. So
So at those events, you're always getting pulled away by somebody, or
Well, always same you, man. It's like it's that's the fun of those kind of conferences and events and things like that. But it's been a treat. So I'd love to come back on anytime.
Absolutely, dude. We'll definitely do it. Now, you got anything in the... Oh, let's take our time here. The tarot courses. Normally we do sort of like the what's next for you, but let's talk a little bit about this. You have tarot course. I believe it's through your website, michaelmhughes.com. People can check it out. What is this tarot course that you have?
Yeah, it's actually the course is the URL for the course is theartofmagicalliving.com, and it's sort of it's where I'm putting together courses on different aspects of magic and things like that. The primary course is called Tarot Foundations course, and that's aimed at anyone who wants to learn tarot, how to read the cards for themselves, for friends. And what makes it different, I think, is, and there's, as you know, like tarot's you can't open TikTok without somebody doing like a tarot card reading. Yeah. But there's a lot of garbage out there. There's a lot of bogus history, people saying that tarot goes back to the ancient Egyptians and crap like that. There's just an enormous amount of nonsense. So this course, I think, is very different because it focuses on the history. So you learn like the real history of the tarot, how it was just a card game before occultists started playing with it and started claiming it was like a repository of ancient wisdom and all that sort of thing. But it's a real hands-on, fun, engaging way to use the cards without having to read a lot of books and memorize a lot of stuff. It's real straightforward. And the people who've taken the class really love it and appreciate that it's just simple instruction, that it's real history, that you can just sorry, I'm stumbling here.
It's all right.
But what I think makes this course different is the focus on history, focus on hands-on practice. It really teaches you how to use basically any deck and use like a really simple system without memorization to just read the cards for other people. It's fun. And it's ecumenical. You don't have to believe in like, oh, my spirit guides are telling me how to read these cards. Right. You can just believe it's like a fun thing to do with your friends, or you can believe it's like a psychologically revealing way of using symbols and archetypes, stuff like that. Yeah,
that's kind of how I always have seen it.
Yeah. So I don't preach. I'm not dogmatic. I just teach people how to use a very simple system to use this tool and to get good, meaningful stuff out of it, because I don't know how tarot cards work. I really don't. I've looked at all sorts of theories, but ultimately, if you play with these really powerful symbols and you sit and you have a conversation with somebody, interesting stuff comes out of it. Yeah, so that
be the case. Yeah,
that course is, and it's like over 12 hours of videos. It's got readings and stuff like that. It's pretty in depth.
Nice.
That's the foundations course. I also, people that are interested in magic or trying out magic, but might have some of that, the qualms or uncertainties that you were talking about earlier. I have a course called Tarot Magic. And that is a way to like kind of get your feet wet in magic that is also ecumenical. You don't have to be a witch. You don't have to be a ceremonial magician. You can just be a person who's interested in magic and rituals. And it uses the tarot as like the framework of the magic. So you don't have to be Wiccan. You don't have to believe in anything. You just you just do these processes, you do these techniques. There's some meditations and things like that. And it just allows you to work with magical techniques and rituals that are just kind of wrapped up in the tarot. So it's not, there's no goddesses or gods. You don't have to convert to any kind of spiritual belief, which I think is asking a lot of people, I don't know what spiritual system works best for you. I don't know. You're you. So I never want to try to get people to engage with stuff that goes against what they believe in, it's really a simple system to experience magic with the archetypes that are in the tarot, and it's really fun. It's cool stuff.
It sounds really cool. Yeah,
I've worked on this for years, like developing all this stuff, and finally I'm like, okay, it's time to like put this out there and share it. It's really fun. So if you're interested in magic, if you're interested in tarot, those are they're inexpensive courses. I think there's a lot of value that comes with them, and the people who've gone through the courses say great stuff, and that's all I can ask for is positive feedback, that people get something out of it.
Yeah, for sure. And I know we're talking like a week before Christmas, but so it's like it's weird in a way, but it's like, look, folks, I know Christmas just ended because now it's January and you're listening to this show, but this is a great gift. I like gifts like this because it's like, you're thinking, a person, what they're interested in, and you're getting them something fucking unique and cool that will really vibe with them beyond like, oh, I got you a book.
Right,
I know you like the tarot, so I bought you this book on the tarot and this deck that I got, a wacky deck, Golden Girls deck or whatever. No, this is this is a really cool gift for people. So I know it's after Christmas, but everybody has a birthday this year. So if you know someone in your family who's into this stuff and you think that they would really dig this, I would highly recommend it. Like I said, it's a really, you tweeted about it today. It sort of reminded me to bring it up in the show. And it was like, I don't personally know anyone. I have to think about it. I probably do, given my line of work, but it's like, this is the kind of thing I would give to someone. This is a really cool concept that you've come up with that I think people would really enjoy. So, check it out and pay it forward to someone in your circle who is interested in the tarot and wants to learn more. It's the art of magicalliving.com.
That's it. And I appreciate that. And I agree. Like it's easy to give somebody a book and maybe they won't read the book, but when you give someone something that they can learn and then share with other people, that's the value in something like this. Like we're so disconnected nowadays and so online that I think that's why tarot is kind of having a resurgence, is people want to connect with people. And what a great way to connect with somebody, sit down and like talk to someone right there with you, looking at pictures, telling stories, talking about their lives. So I've always thought, just like you said, thought of this as like paying it forward, teaching people this really cool experience that they can provide for other people.
Yes.
So, yeah.
That's absolutely right, yeah. I've had 2 tarot readings from friends at paranormal conferences, and they were both, it's a very intimate experience. It's very personal, and it's like it's rich, if that makes any sense. You really kind of get into you get really focused into the moment, and you're in that conversation with the other person. You're really engaging ideas and thinking about yourself and shit. And it's really
and how often do we do that? Like, how often do we just sit with someone nowadays, face to face, and talk about stuff in our lives? What's going on? It's rare. It's rare, but it's so important. It's like part of what makes us human.
Yeah.
That's why I love it. That's what keeps me doing it after all these years. So
yeah, it's cool.
Appreciate you mentioning that.
Absolutely. Theartofmagicalliving.com is the website for the tarot courses. MichaelMHughes.com is Michael's main website, the hub. Check it out. He's all over social media. I like how your thing even said, yes, I'm even on Facebook still. I don't mind Facebook. It's at least that's where you know everybody's going to be. It's kind of like, all right, well, I can almost certainly find them on Facebook. Anyway, like I said, man, I really enjoyed this conversation. We will definitely have you back. I just taped a show with Matt Hopewell, AP Strange, and I kind of said the same thing to him. And I was like, we had done a show back in March, and it was like, okay, we had to do the first show where I go bang bang down. Let's do the Matt Hopewell greatest hits. This show we just taped, this was the conversation show. So I'm sure now when we get you back on the program, it's gonna be even more just fantastic because now we've done the magic for the resistance and how you got into the magic, and then we can get really into the stuff when we talk in the future. But tonight was fantastic. I loved it. It was awesome. I really enjoyed it, and I'm glad we had the chance to finally sit down and talk and really dig into your background, fucking the world of magic. I've been fascinated by the whole magic for the resistance thing since you went through that whole experience. So it was really awesome hearing about it, man. It was a fun conversation. I can tell when it's like, if I enjoy, I'm loving being a part of this experience, this moment, this conversation. I think the folks at home will too. It's been a fun evening, man. I really appreciate it.
Cool. Thank you. I've loved it too. And I look forward to next time. It's going to be a different world when we talk again. So I'm sure we'll have plenty to discuss.
Yes, absolutely.
Cool, man. Thanks again.